All right, so this is chapter 6 of the Nutrition ATI. So cultural, ethnic, and religious influences. Cultural, ethnic, and religious considerations greatly affect nutritional health. Understanding that ideas regarding food choices and nutrition vary among cultures that can help to prevent ethnocentrism, which is identifying and incorporating individual preferences, promotes client-centered care. Cultural traditions affect food choices and routines. Nurses should take this into consideration when planning and communicating nutritional goals with clients. Acculturation is the process of a culture, ethnic, or religious group's adopting of the dominant culture's behaviors, beliefs, and values. Considering the client's food way can be a helpful way to determine dietary preferences, which includes the role of foods, food preparation, what foods are considered edible, timing of meals, and use of food for health or other benefits. Culture and nutrition. Culture influences every aspect of life, including nutritional intake. While common preferences exist within some cultures, individual preferences and the degree to which the client follows cultural recommendations can vary greatly. For further information on culture, refer to Fundamentals Chapter 35, Cultural and Spiritual Nursing Care. Food might be symbolic for a client, representing masculinity or femininity, viewed as expressions of love or punishment, representing connectedness or separateness, part of celebration or mourning, and comfort foods that release to a client's past. Culture defines what foods are edible or allowable in the diet. This idea is not always based on the nutritional value or the visual appeal. Considerations include whether the food is perceived as harmful, what foods are for animal consumption, which is not human, and whether others within the culture consume it. The types of food within a culture fall into 3 categories regarding the role they have in the diet. Core foods make up the majority of dietary intake, the foods eaten most often and consistently. Secondary foods are not consumed as often as core foods but are included often, and peripheral foods are consumed occasionally due to cost or availability. Peripheral foods might be reserved for special days or consumed less often because they are not well tolerated. Food preparation guidelines can include how the food is obtained or prepared prior to being obtained by the client, methods of cooking, and the use of seasonings. The timing and frequency of meals can vary across cultures. Foods are often linked to health beliefs, with cultures defining what foods are helpful or not, whether foods are curative, and under what conditions the foods should be consumed. American culture values eating foods from food groups, fruits and vegetables, grains and proteins. Many cultures, for example, Asian and Pacific Islander cultures, have health beliefs regarding hot and cold balance. Through acculturation, individuals and groups change their practices to reflect the dominant culture. First-generation members of a family are more likely to follow their traditional food way, with subsequent generations incorporating the dominant culture's food practices through socialization. Acculturation of the diet can include removing or replacing traditional foods with new ones and adding new foods to the diet. Dietary changes resulting from acculturation can be positive if the client includes more healthy foods, or negative if the intake of high fat, high calorie, or high sodium increases. Selected populations, so Hispanic and Latin. This is the predominant minority group in the U.S., with the largest percentage clients being of Mexican heritage. Certain foods are considered hot or cold and can be used to provide balance for healing. Cinnamon and teas, such as mint chamomile, can be used as part of healing. Nutritional related concerns: high intake of fruit, dark green, and orange vegetable legumes, increased intake of saturated fat and sodium, decreased intake of whole grains and milk, high prevalence of obesity, and more than twice as likely to develop diabetes type 2. Black African American. This is the second largest minority group in the U.S. Most individuals can identify a West African heritage or ancestors who immigrated through the Caribbean, Central America, or Eastern Africa. Food habits of Black African American clients are related more to personal factors, such as work schedule, location, socioeconomic status, than heritage. Black African Americans are more likely than white Americans to accept a larger body size as normal. Nutrition-related concerns. Score just under the national average on USDA healthy eating scores. This is total and saturated fat, sodium, cholesterol intake. Lower intake of whole grains, milk, and vegetables than clients who are white who have a higher intake of sodium and saturated fat. Highest prevalence rates of obesity, increased rates of diabetes with increased risk of complications, and increased risk for hypertension, which is usually uncontrolled. Asian American and Pacific Islander. This is the third largest minority group in the U.S. and includes 37 different ethnic groups. The Chinese population is the largest subgroup of Asian American people. Common food patterns among this diverse group include devoting considerable skill and time to food preparation and consumption of rice and vegetables more than meat. Many Asian cultures believe in the balance of yin and yang forces and that when food is digested, it turns into one of these components. Diseases associated with yin forces are treated by consuming yang foods and yang illness with yin foods. Yang foods are fried foods, coffee, spice, meat, and meat broths. Yin foods are seaweed, many fruits and vegetables, and cold beverages. Nutrition-related concerns. Lowest prevalence of obesity, highest life expectancy, Asian American females, and higher risk of diabetes, type 2 when body fat increases, compared to other groups. Selected cultural diets. These diets, common to the major subcultural groups in the United States, can vary from client to client. Acculturation causes a moving away from the traditional foods in place of others. American. Many foods from various cultures are components of American cuisine. Foods are often prepared quickly or are expected to be made fast. Foods prepared at home often include pre-made ingredients or packaged kits to reduce mealtime preparation. Nutritional health risks. Convenience foods for home cooking are high in sodium and calories while low in fiber. Portion sizes on packaged meal kits are often small, leading to consuming more than one serving. Meals and snacks eaten away from home are low in fruit, vegetables, dairy, and whole grains, but high in fat, sugar, and sodium. Soul food. The soul food diet has had its origins in southern and western Africa. Many Americans have adopted soul food practices, particularly in the southern U.S. It is more common in low socioeconomic or rural areas. Traditional foods such as rice, grits, cornbread, hominy, okra, greens, sweet potatoes, apples, peaches, black-eyed peas, red and pinto beans, peanuts, fruit, drinks, and fatback. Acculturation is buying convenience foods rather than preparing homemade breads, luncheon meat, cured meats. Increased milk consumption and possible reduced intake of fruits and vegetables if not readily available. Nutritional health risks. High in fat, protein, and sodium. Low in potassium, calcium, and fiber. This is protective nutrients. And many foods are fried. Mexican. Spanish and Native American cultures have influenced the traditional Mexican diet. Traditional foods such as rice, corn, tortillas, tropical fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, egg, cheese, seafood, poultry. Tortillas eaten at most meals, animal protein from ground poultry, pork, or goat. Vegetables are often incorporated into the main dish. Acculturation. Decreased intake of vegetables, intake of corn-based products replaced with flour-based, increased milk intake or replaced with low-fat options, red meat intake increased while legume intake decreased, increased use of fats, which is butter, margarine, and salad dressing, and increased use of high-sugar, low-nutrient beverages, for example, replacing fruit juice with carbonated sodas. Chinese, largest Asian American subgroup. Traditional foods is wheat, which is northern, rice, which is southern, noodles, fruits, land and sea vegetables, nuts, soy, foods, tofu, tea, beer, soups made from bone, and fish containing small bones provide most of calcium intake. Acculturation, increased intake of wheat-based foods, increased intake of raw vegetables and replacement of traditional vegetables, increased fruit intake, increased intake of dairy, meat, ethnic dishes, and fast food. Nutritional related health risks. Most food are cooked with exception of occasional fresh fruit. Risk of increased sodium is possible due to salting and drying to preserve foods and use of salt-based condiments. Vegetarian diets. Semi-vegetarian or flexitarian diets are mainly plant-based diets with occasional intake of meat, poultry, dairy, or fish. Vegetarian. A vegetarian diet typically omits meat, seafood, poultry, or fish. Some clients include eggs, dairy products, fish, and/or occasional other animal products. Vegan. Pure vegan diets do not include animal products of any type, including eggs and milk products. A pure vegan diet requires a variety of plant materials to be consumed in specific combinations in order to ensure essential amino acid intake. The vegan diet is adequate in protein with sufficient intake of nuts and legumes. Clients following a vegan diet should ensure adequate intake of iron, zinc, calcium, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin B12, because there is a risk of deficiency in these nutrients depending on the types of food selected. A raw vegan diet is based on consuming uncooked plant-based foods. A macrobiotic diet is a whole foods diet based on locally grown plants with occasional fish or seafood. Nutritional related health risks. Risks for deficiency in vitamin B12, vitamin D, iron, calcium, and zinc, unless the client incorporates these foods regularly. Religion and nutrition. Religion has a profound influence on foodways, especially because religion crosses geographic boundaries. Although culture and religion are linked, religion often has more of an influence on dietary practices than culture. Variations among individual denominations of a religion can vary greatly. The dietary laws for Orthodox Judaism are outlined in the Torah. 2 Protestant Christian faiths describe dietary laws: the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon, and the Seventh-day Adventists. The Quran contains food laws for an Islamic faith. Foods are either permitted, halal, or prohibited, haram. Hindu and Buddhist religions have values related to not harming living creatures, which is ahimsa, which leads to followers practicing vegetarianism. Some followers in a particular religion follow the moral laws but not dietary prescriptions. Always ask clients to describe their dietary preferences. Variations based on religion. Eating on holy days. Some religions observe feasts on specific days. Eastern Orthodox Christian and Judaism. During Passover, Judaism calls for consumption of unleavened bread only. Fasting for religious holidays. Islam calls for fasting during Ramadan. Roman Catholicism calls for refraining from meat consumption on Ash Wednesday and Fridays during Lent, and to avoid food or beverage intake for 1 hour before communion. Seventh-day Adventism recommends a 5 to 6 hour interval between meals. Judaism calls for a 24-hour fast during the Yom Kippur. Restricting specific substances. Alcohol is Islam, Hindu, Mormon, Seventh-day Adventism. Pork is Seventh-day Adventism, Orthodox Judaism, Islam, Hindu, and Buddhism. Coffee or tea is Seventh-day Adventism and Mormonism. Other clients who followed Orthodox Judaism might not eat meat and dairy products at the same time. Parev foods contain neither and can be consumed at any time. Clients who follow Judaism might consume only fish that have scales and fins. Consuming animal products. Vegetarian diet. Seventh-day Adventism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Orthodox Judaism and Islam call for consumption of kosher animals. Both have regulations for how animals are slaughtered, particularly so that no blood is consumed. Preparing foods. Orthodox Judaism prohibits food preparation on the Sabbath. Nursing interventions. Obtaining the client's preferences related to nutrition is vital. The information on cultural and religious influences on nutrition is so vast that the nurse should focus more on the needs of the individual clients for whom the nurse is assigned care. Ask questions regarding the following: what portions of the client's diet are influenced by personal values, what the client considers healthy versus unhealthy, what food and eating means to the client, when the client eats meals and if there is a sequence to the foods eaten, who stops for and prepares the foods for client consumes, whether the client abstains from any foods, whether there are restrictions related to foods and food preparation, whether foods are linked to religious practice or spiritual beliefs, and whether the client's beliefs dictate fasting, feasting, or types of foods consumed on specific days or dates. Wow. Seek further information about the client's preferred dietary practices from reputable sources as needed to guide nutritional counseling. If specific foods associated with the client's culture are deemed negative medically, ask the client to reduce consumption of the foods rather than eliminating them, which is reducing portion size and eating less often. Suggest fruits and vegetables that are similar in taste or texture to what the client prefers to increase or ensure adequate consumption, and seek the assistance of a dietitian to ensure the client will receive essential nutrients and to help combine medical recommendations with personal preferences. Okay, so a nurse is assisting a client with selecting food choices on a menu. Which of the following actions by the nurse demonstrates ethnocentrism? This is recommending one's own favorite foods. A nurse is reviewing the effect of culture on nutrition during a staff in-service. Which of the following groups prescribes eating specific foods to balance forces in the body during illness? This is Asian culture and Roman Catholicism. A nurse is caring for a client who has hypertension. Which of the following dietary patterns is sometimes followed by Asian clients and places clients at risk for this condition? This is preparation of foods using sodium. A nurse educator is teaching a class on culture and food to a group of newly hired nurses. Which of the following statements by a nurse indicates an understanding of the teaching? This is most clients who practice Orthodox Judaism do not eat meat with dairy products. Which of these dietary laws are followed by those practicing Orthodox Judaism? This is meat cannot be eaten with dairy products, pork and pork products prohibited. Partial or total fasting, and ritual slaughter of animals. Which of these dietary laws are followed by those practicing Islam? This is B, C, E, and F. Pork and pork products prohibited, partial or total fasting, alcohol is prohibited, and ritual slaughter of animals.